At Wharton's Future of Finance Forum in Washington, D.C., the message was clear. Finance isn't evolving, it's being rewired. From digital dollars to artificial intelligence, from catastrophic U.S. debt to global conflict, the elites of Wall Street, academia, and Washington came together to map out the decade ahead, or at least to reconfirm what many of us tuning into this channel have been locked in on for years. Federal Reserve officials called stablecoins the modernization of money. The passing of the Genius Act has made them fully backed and federally regulated, a U.S. blueprint the rest of the world can copy. Former Fed leaders warned political pressure is now their biggest risk. A lot of poo-pooing on President Trump, and seriously, I just don't get it.
Let's say that Trump gets 4 seats on the Federal Reserve Board, which will give him a certain amount if the people are compliant, which they may not be. What effect do you think that would have on the standing of the U.S. Treasury and the role of the U.S. dollar? Go ahead, John.
Well, it would depend on how they acted. So obviously, I think if he had 4 seats and those folks continued to conduct policy in the tradition of the last 4 or 5 chairs since 1979, Volcker forward, there wouldn't be a problem. They need to. The price stability needs to be a clear focus in order to have confidence that holding a government security or any security, that you get the real value out of that in the end, and
right.
you won't have it inflated away. If they look like they're caving in to the president who wants interest rates at 1% and very sharp declines in interest rates, if independence truly is compromised here, then there'll be inflation, then there will be a loss of confidence in the dollar and holding these treasury securities. Then the markets, I think, will wake up to the danger. I do think we've talked about communication to ordinary people. I think linking independence to the affordability issue, to inflation,
Yes.
is the way to say, you guys are worried about inflation. You need to keep an independent central bank if you're to have any hope of having low, stable prices.
One of the ways
U.S. debt is now growing faster than the economy itself, a trajectory panelists called unsustainable, full stop. And the warning sign is already here. Interest payments alone are rapidly consuming a growing share of our hard-earned tax dollars, crowding out everything else.
Okay, we kind of know it's unsustainable. You can't have a debt that's growing faster than your economy. On top of that, we have these interest burdens, structural deficits. We also have 2 really important things that Phil didn't mention, but I think everyone is starting to realize. We have major trust funds that are going to be insolvent in 7 short years in both Social Security and Medicare. But despite knowing that, despite like every warning sign that there could be on fiscal policy blinking, there is a huge resistance to making changes because politically, it is a lot easier to make the deficit worse. It's really fun to cut taxes and to increase spending, and there is a huge level of partisanship and polarization that makes each party think winning this next election is more important than ever. I'm going to give away all those things, make it worse, and I'll do better once we have a majority, which of course never is the case, because then you have to keep the majority. So why does it matter? It's really hard to connect it to people's lives. People go home, unless you're me, you don't vote for the person who's going to raise your taxes the most and cut your spending the most. It's not a popular winning agenda. And I think it's because there's such a unclear link. But it has negative effects on the economy. It slows economic growth. It pushes up interest rates, making things more expensive. It pushes up inflation. And it leaves us poor over time. We don't think about this, but we all have a lower standard of living today than we would have in the past if we hadn't borrowed for so many unnecessary things.
AI dominated the finance conversation. Anthropic's head of product for financial services, Nick Lin, said that their firm aims to make AI your coworker for the front of the house, middle of the house, and back of the house.
So I'm going to start with you, Nick. Given your role in Anthropic, what are some of the products that you're trying to introduce using AI for financial services? What are the products that you think people are demanding these days?
Sounds great. For those of you not familiar with Anthropic, hopefully that's very few of you, Anthropic, we're an AI safety lab that's really focused on developing AI systems with 3 H's: honest, harmless, and helpful. And we've been in the business for a few years, but I think especially with the recent traction of Cloud Code and called Coworker, which we launched a few days ago. We're really an enterprise-focused company, and to be enterprise-focused means that we really focus on vertical-specific use cases, with financial services probably being our most advanced and most active vertical. And we're serving the largest financial services institutions across the Fortune 500 and below. So from our vantage point, that's a difficult question to answer, because what they're looking for is for AI to supercharge all of their systems. And that's across from front office, investment decision-making processes, middle office, risk management processes, as well as back office. Now, what's actually been deployed to date, I think AI has been fantastic at high-level research, analysis, synthesis use cases. That's been the most advanced. But where we are really excited is how can AI systems actually become more autonomous coworkers, with obviously many risks that we will discuss in a bit. But that autonomous coworker is not only able to do desktop research, but it is able to create spreadsheets for you. And we just launched Cloud in Excel a few months ago as well. Create PowerPoints that you can share with others, and ultimately make decisions with human input as well. So that's really the broader direction that we're thinking about going in, much more fully autonomous virtual coworkers that can take on decision making on behalf of the humans.
The traditional minds in the room agreed on the advancements as long as the tech is auditable, explainable, and ultimately accountable by us humans. From China's economic strategy to Venezuela and Iran, experts agreed geopolitics is no longer background noise, it's a market driver.
The rest of the world is going to have two options: work with China or work with the United States, because we are kind of developing the ex-China sort of full supply chain. I think Russia's really worried about China too, so it's going to be a tough call for Russia. But I think the rest of the world, I think the majority of the rest of the world is going to pick the United States, because they will at least have fair trade rather than a country sort of using that leverage for whatever they want for gain.
During the panel discussion on the evolution of private capital markets, I managed to slip in a question on the evolving role of special purpose vehicles, SPVs, and where they're headed next. As private equity becomes increasingly tokenized, underpinned by blockchain infrastructure and series LLC frameworks, the current model still concentrates an enormous amount of discretionary power in the hands of the SPV manager, aka the middleman. We're seeing this risk firsthand in cases like the Link2 Chapter 11 bankruptcy case. So the question I raised was simple, but proactive. As AI becomes more deeply embedded in financial infrastructure, what happens if SPV manager duties are no longer human exclusive? Meaning, what if allocation decisions, compliance enforcement, reporting, and governance could be executed by an AI agent, transparent, auditable, and rules-based, rather than a single discretionary actor? After a full day of conversation about agentic AI-driven financial products being born in the private sector, it feels less like science fiction and something that's now worth a debate. Just throwing it out there. And my final word, leadership isn't interested in managing this disruption. They're posturing themselves for what they look like post this great transformation and how they're reinventing themselves through it. The private capital markets, our identities, and the world will be digital. At Wharton's Future of Finance Forum, the future wasn't predicted, it was drafted, highlighted, and underscored. Told you so. I'm super excited to have locked in this cutting edge content on behalf of my global community. I didn't even talk about what lead bank CEO Jackie Ress has said about the evolution of this digital transformation, where the big bank ultimately buys the little bank. So what really changes? Stay tuned for a deeper dive into Wharton's Future of Finance Forum after a quick trip to Boston, where I'll be covering John Deaton's cocktail reception as the community rallies behind his U.S. Senate campaign and a fight for a free and fair financial system. John's fighting for underserved communities nationwide, a punch to the nose to the system. Go get him, John. This is gonna be another mercenary trip for me. I'll be in and out of Boston, mission focused the entire time. Good chance I'll lock in a compelling interview with the White Knight of the XRP community himself.
And out of nowhere comes a ray of sunshine, and that sunshine is named John Deaton.
Looking forward to connecting with you all along the way. Thanks for tuning in. Love you mucho.